So now we come to the consumers of electricity. We've looked extensively at the producers of electricity, but what about the consumers? Well, just like producers need to account for time as a factor of electricity generation, consumers also have to consider time as a factor of electricity consumption. So time is essential to understanding electricity consumption. Since consumers consume far little or far less power than a power plant will produce, we measure consumer electricity consumption in kilowatt hours rather than megawatt hours. And so home consumption is measured in kilowatt hours, and remember, a kilo is 1,000. So 1 kilowatt hour is 1,000 watts consumed over 1 hour of time. And a typical home in the United States consumes annually about 10,837 kilowatt hours. And if you divide 10,837 by 12, because there's 12 months in a year, we get the average monthly electricity consumption for a typical American home of 903 kilowatt hours. Now, usually then, if you get your bill, you'll see that it's never 903 exactly. It's usually a little less or a little bit more, and you can expect then a range. So 500 plus kilowatt hours versus, say, 1,500 or so kilowatt hours. Somewhere in there is going to be your particular home's bill. If you are very conscientious and work towards increasingly turning off your lights and being energy conscious, then you'll have fewer kilowatt hours consumed in a month. And if you have a lot of appliances running, especially at peak times, you're going to have an expensive bill. And also, if you have a lot of appliances running, you're going to have, of course, more kilowatt hours consumed in that monthly billing cycle. So consumers are charged then per kilowatt hour, and charges are going to vary a lot by state, by region, and by time. So for instance, in Illinois, we might have cheaper electricity rates than, say, in Iowa. Or within Illinois, the northwestern region of Illinois might have cheaper electricity rates than, say, the area around Chicago. And then finally, time of day matters a lot. So electricity is always cheaper in the dead of night. So for instance, say from 9 p.m. to 4 a.m. That's going to be a time block when electricity will be the cheapest that it ever is during a 24-hour cycle. The most expensive is during what's called peak times, when everybody is turning everything on and you have a high demand. When demand goes up, prices go up, and when demand goes down, as in the dead of night, you have then prices going down. So on average, in the United States, our electricity costs 11.8 cents for every kilowatt hour. And that's literally 11 pennies and almost one other penny. It's fairly inexpensive compared to other parts of the world. Now, how this relates to your home, so if you have a home then that uses 903 kilowatt hours in a month, your electricity charge is going to be $106.55. And that's just for the electricity. And we figured that out by multiplying your kilowatt hours used, 903, times 0.118, and that is 11.8 cents. So you multiply both those out and you get $106.55. As we'll find, though, 11.8 cents is relatively, well, that's the average, and there are relatively more expensive areas and also relatively less expensive areas. So here we have then a Commonwealth Edison bill. Commonwealth Edison is a utility that provides electricity for thousands of Illinois consumers. And notice then we've got on the left-hand side a handy 13-month usage bar graph. And notice there's a lot of data missing there. That's because this bill is from a new house where nobody used to live in during November, December, January, February, March, April, and May, and June. And then people started to live in there July, August, September, October, November. That's why there's data for those months. And we see then that the y-axis has kilowatt hours used. And we have 475 to 950 to give you a sense of what the scale is. Beneath that, we have electricity usage in a tabular form. And the tabular form is used to render that graphical form above it. On the right-hand side, we have our bill. And notice it says amount due on December 17, 2013 is $96.71. Beneath that, we have meter information. And there are various meter information bits of data here. The most important thing is the before and after meter reading. So the previous meter reading is 10,728 kilowatt hours, and the current meter reading is 11,672 kilowatt hours. If you subtract those two, you can see what the difference is, 944 kilowatt hours. That's the amount of electricity that this house has consumed over this billing cycle, 944 kilowatt hours. So we see that this is, in fact, a little bit higher than the average amount of electricity that's used in an average home in America right now, by about 40 or so kilowatt hours. So a little bit higher than the average. After that, we have then three big blocks of how the bill is determined. We have the electricity supply services segment, we have delivery services segment, and we have taxes and other segment. Under the electricity supply services, notice that 944 kilowatt hours is the multiplier that's used to determine the electricity supply charge. And we see that electricity per kilowatt hour in this particular home is 0.04586 per kilowatt hour. That is about 4.5 cents per kilowatt hour. Again, this is relatively cheap compared to 11.8 cents that we saw on the previous slide. And that just kind of exemplifies how regional differences matter a lot in terms of the price of electricity. So during this billing cycle, this home used 944 kilowatt hours, and each kilowatt hour cost about 4.5 pennies. And that means then, just for the electricity alone, they owe $43.29. Now the bill is for $96.71, over $50 more. Why is this? Well, every electricity bill has lots of other things tacked onto it. And so we see then a transmission service charge and a purchased electricity adjustment. All of those are, both of those are under the electricity supply services. Sometimes the kilowatt hours are used as a multiplier, sometimes they're not. Beneath that, we have delivery services. And the first one that's sometimes surprising for people is the customer charge. This is a flat charge that's charged to every consumer regardless of how many kilowatt hours are used in a month. So you could use 500 kilowatt hours, or you could use 1,500 kilowatt hours in a billing cycle. And in either case, you'd be charged $12.79. You could even use no kilowatt hours, and you'd still get a bill from the electric company for your being a customer. This is because there's infrastructural and logistical issues that go along with signing you up to be a customer. And this is recovered then by charging customers every month. We also have various other charges here, and notice that the multiplier of 944 kilowatt hours is used in some cases, and other cases it's not. Beneath that, we have taxes and other. And depending on where you live and the policies that your lawmakers have made, you may have more or fewer itemized pieces of this billing cycle under this rubric. So environmental cost recovery adjustment, energy efficiency programs, and state tax, these are all included there. So you have then these three large blocks. One of them is $56.69, another is $35.07, and the other is $4.95. If you add up all those three, you get $96.71 for your electricity bill for this particular billing cycle. Your electricity bill will look very similar to this, and will also itemize these issues. Expect it to be a little different though, because of course you are going to be living in a different part of the United States or the world than where this bill was obtained from.